Hey everybody, it's Chris Bummer here for JoBlo. I'm at Comic-Con and we're about to do some cast interviews for Hellboy, the Crooked Man. Kind of curious about this one, and I know a lot of you are too, so let's get started, shall we? So Adeline, right?
Yes. Hi.
So you play Bobby Joe. What can you tell me about your character?
She is a rookie BPRD agent who kind of stumbles into this epic adventure with Hellboy when things go awry.
Yeah. So what was it like for you being on the set of like something, I guess, working with Brian, working in this genre, in the comic book genre? Was that must have been kind of exciting, right?
Yes. I do feel like I work in this genre a lot. So for me, it felt like coming home. So being able to work every day on set, having Brian as our director, who's so incredible, so communicative. He brings great energy. And then also acting opposite of, Jeff and Jack. They're such incredible castmates.
So what's it like we're seeing Jack outside of the Hellboy makeup, though? You must be more used to working with him in Hellboy form.
Well, you know what? When I first met him, it was during stunt training. So I got to see him as him first, which was nice. And I was just, I thought it was amazing, his transformation. I think he looks incredible as Hellboy. We spent a lot of time as Hellboy, but I feel like at some point it just still felt like Jack. He made him so human that I didn't feel like I lost like the human aspect of Hellboy. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Well, I mean, are you excited to see how the footage goes down with the Comic-Con crowd today? It should be pretty intense.
Absolutely. I'm happy that we have Mike Mignola here. We really hope that people enjoy this movie and enjoy the footage today. It's gonna, we're just trying to strip it back and bring it back to its roots and, put something on screen that was on paper.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So you threw me off a bit because I'm a huge Yellowstone fan. So it was weird turning around and saying, "But Jimmy, fuck, I love you. Hey, I love you, man. Thank you so much. I love you on that show, man. So it's kind of exciting for me to talk to you. But it's a totally different role for you here, though. A totally different kind of vibe than being on the ranch. And hanging out with the bunkhouse boys, and Rip and the gang. I'm get carried away. So what can you tell me about it? What can you tell me about this being in the show?
In some ways, it's similar because Jimmy and Tom Farrell in Hellboy the Crooked Man are both in way over their head and scrambling to catch up,
Yeah.
Tom is a guy who at a young age sold his soul to the devil, and now he's trying to get it back. And so he's contending with these forces far beyond his power, far beyond his wildest imagination. And he very luckily stumbles into Hellboy along the way. So I think his journey would be very short, and he wouldn't make it very far if he didn't happen to stumble into Hellboy very luckily. So in some ways, the characters are very similar, because I'm always in over my head, I'm always scrambling to keep up, and I'm always learning the hard way.
Well, I have to say, though, is that much more interesting to you as an actor, though? Because, I think the reason people love Jimmy is because he's a screw-up, but it's kind of fun to see him rise to the occasion and be surprisingly good at a lot of things, right? And much more capable than anybody thinks. That probably sounds like a little bit what you might do with this role. It makes that, I think, a more engaging hero, right? When you see them knock down a little bit and rise to the occasion.
Yeah, and it gives you room to grow, right? I think what I like in a character is when they grow and change over the course of a film. So if you start at the bottom, it leaves you a lot of room to grow, which is nice. So I'm always starting way at the bottom and then making it, some of the way at least.
How did it feel working in the genre space as opposed to working in kind of a much more earthbound place?
It's so fun, and this movie kind of splits the difference. I do think this is a very human Hellboy. I think this is an emotionally intelligent Hellboy. I think Jack is an actor with incredible pathos and empathy. So working with Jack is also, he's a very human, there's a very grounded element to this, and then there's also the crazy shit. There's also amazing horror sequences, action sequences. So we kind of got to have the best of both worlds in a really fun way.
Okay, one last question I got to ask you.
Please.
Are we going to see more of Jimmy in the spin-off Yellowstone show? Because I hope yes.
Boy, I hope yes, too. That's a really fun job, and I'll do it as long as they'll have me.
You're my favorite character, man. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Great to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, well, Jack, hey, man, it's great to meet you. Great to meet, you're actually the first Hellboy I've ever met.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, nice to meet you.
Was expecting something more coming out there. Yeah, you look a little different than I thought you would.
Yeah. So switch it up. I'm switching it up. My horns are in.
So what was it like seeing yourself for the first time as this kind of iconic character?
It was hard to take in.
Yeah.
It was exciting from the minute I got the phone call up to this day. it's a one-of-a-kind opportunity. Honestly, it's an iconic character, and I'm a lot more excited inside. I don't really jump for joy, but inside I jump for joy.
What kind of an interesting brotherhood too with David Harbour and Ron Perlman, right? Two great actors.
Absolutely, honored to be a part of it, and I think 3 different spins on it for sure.
What makes Hellboy different though than your typical run-of-the-mill superhero? If you could even call him a superhero.
Right, he's
Super villain in a way.
super villain, a reluctant hero, kind of preordained destiny. I would say he's a lot more reluctant to be who he's destined to be than others, right? He's not, I would say, our version of the Hellboy. He's just a guy who would love to go to a concert or take a girl out to the dance, but it's a little hard when you got a big old tail and horns, and so he's got this dilemma, right, of being half human, half demon. So I think personality-wise, a little different from other superheroes, and he's also obviously, like you said, you don't know if he's a superhero, supervillain. It depends.
So how is this version of the character different than the other ones that we've seen, at least as far as the big screen goes? Because I've heard that it's a lot closer to the comics.
It's very close to the comics. Outside of the Bobby Joe character and maybe several scenes they stitched in there, it's directly pulled, sometimes even frame by frame.
Nice.
Really dark, really rated R. Little, I want to use the word grimier, darker. And, there's a spin on Hellboy where he's a little younger, meaning I think there's a little bit of more vulnerability and reluctance, and maybe he's not as confident as we used to see him. But he's got to do his job. He's been trained by the U.S. government to deal with the paranormal, and he's just off to the next mission. But there's a certain boyish quality to him that he still harbors. Even though he's a big guy, I think there's a little bit of more vulnerability and humanness to him.
Was the costume and the makeup pretty uncomfortable, or how long did it take you every day?
It was brutal. I don't know how the other guys did it, man. I wish I had their number. I would have called them.
Yeah.
It was tough. There's no trick to it. You just had to get through it, and it was taxing. It was hard, but I know what I signed up for.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mike, Brian, pleasure to meet you. I interviewed you before for Mom and Dad, actually.
I remember. In Canada.
Yeah. Montreal. Yeah. Okay, so Mike, huge fan of yours. And I gotta ask you, you were talking before about how this is the first time Hellboy has ever truly been a horror movie, and I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean it's a smaller story. It takes place in the woods. It doesn't bring in any giant elaborate CGI stuff. It doesn't deal with the whole end of the world and stuff. It's a small story very much based on Appalachian folklore. I went through books of Appalachian folklore and just circled all the bits, including the Lucky Bone, all that stuff. I pulled that of folklore books, and I glued it all together, and there was no room for no need for big Lovecraftian type horror stuff. It just worked as a tight little spooky movie with witches and ghosts.
And Brian, so for you, what was it like stepping into this kind of Hellboy world and kind of taking a much different aesthetic, I think, than the other directors?
It was great, and it was easy because my approach was not to reinvent or try to rehash anything that had been done before. I didn't. Those movies are great. I love that people love those movies. This has nothing to do with those. This is straight back to the original source material. So we had an amazing comic book that is Mike's favorite Hellboy story, many fans' favorite Hellboy story, one of my favorites. And we had this incredible book. I had a script by the Dawn, right? I mean, so I know we're going authentic. We're going to go back to the roots, and all I have to do is sort of execute this tone the way it properly should be off the page, with as much humility and love as I could muster.
So, question for both of you: what do you think is the key what do you think makes Hellboy so beloved by people? Because he is such a cult character and he's been around for such a long time. Why is it that people in some ways relate to him so deeply? Because I think, we all feel like outsiders sometimes, and he's the ultimate outsider.
I guess, I don't know. I have no idea. I certainly never expected this thing to go on this long. I don't know what makes it work. I did base Hellboy on human people. I didn't go into it saying this is a superhero or this is a demon. I just said I want to write it as a guy but I'll get bored drawing a guy, so I'll make him red and give him a tail and this big weird hand that I didn't quite understand. So, but he was always meant to be a human being. I couldn't, so it's hard to think about what does a demon think about, but I knew what I thought about. Physically, I knew what my father was like, because that's the physicality of Hellboy is very much my father, because he was a tough old guy. So I think if anything, it's that I'm writing a person, not a, brooding monster.
Right. And how about you, Brian? How about you, Brian? Great. Why do you think people love Hellboy so much? I just enjoy it so much. Really glad.
I mean,
Tail.
Oh my
Everybody
God, the tail.
secretly wants a tail.
Yeah, the tail was a challenge. Oh, I mean, look, Hellboy's beloved. He can't say this, and maybe like you're inside it to the point where you don't even see it, but I can see it. It's a brilliant design. It's a great name. It's a brilliant design for a character, and you have part of it too, that everybody's an outsider. Everybody can relate to him because we love this guy because he's a guy who's sort of trying to get along in a world that he sort of doesn't belong in. He wants to be like everyone else in a way, but he'll never be like everyone else, and he can never be like everyone else, and he has this weight on him and this burden on him that he's trying to deal with, but he's really just trying to be a guy. And I know Jack Kesy too, who's playing the role. I think we all found this really relatable. We never talked about him as a demon or a otherworldly character at all. We just talked about him as a person. This movie is also, it's a period piece. It's set in the late 50s, so he's a younger Hellboy. And this is a Hellboy, he's a guy who's trying to find his way in the world. And it's hard for all of us to do that, let alone, we don't have, a tail and, sawed-off horns. It's hard for any of us trying to figure out who we are. So imagine how hard it is for him.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.